So we're basically just going to talk about coaching this split. First topic we're going to do is kind of how the coach fits into their team dynamic, or how there could or could not be a rubric to kind of judge all coaches. Because a lot of people look at, hey, this coach is really good at pick and ban, or people speak highly of him. Kind of how do you particularly look at coaching is what we're going to start with.
Sure. So I think overall, at least in my opinion, there's like 4 facets of coaching. So there's like the game knowledge, which is something that most coaches have or build up as like they spend more time with players. They have like systems of how you want to organize the things that you want players to learn and how you prioritize like the things that you're working on. Then there's like the aspect of taking care of the players in terms of maintaining their physical and like mental well-being. And then you just have like your general authority and how much influence you have in like the organization over the players, etc. And I don't think there's any complete coach, at least in the West. I think there's a lot of teams that do like multiple coaches that sort of fills multiple roles. So if you take like one giant rubric and try to like pigeonhole coaches in it, I don't think that really fits. You just have to look at each team as like an individual like entity and then see which coach fits in with that. Because there's some teams that need a lot more game knowledge if they have like rookies. Some teams have a lot of veterans, and it just is easier if you just provide them structure. And so I think every team does it differently. And right now, I think it's a lot of coaches are trying to learn all the other facets. So I think that might change in like the upcoming seasons or years. But right now, I think it's still fairly like new.
So what I'd be curious to ask you is, what do you think is essentially the most important part of that, right? You have this rubric. We talk about pick ban a lot. That's, I think, the outside looking in. That's the most obvious thing to kind of judge coaching on. But then there's a lot to do with how can the players fit into that? What is their champion pool? So do you think that pick ban is kind of the most important facet, or what do you think is the most important for coaching?
I think that when they started doing pick bans with coaches on stage, that's a responsibility that I think Riot wanted the coaches to have. I don't necessarily think that that is something that coaches should always do, because sometimes all you need someone on stage is to take in like the information that's already presented in the pick ban scenario and make a final decision. For my team, it happens to be me, but I'm pretty sure other teams, it's other players that know a lot more about the compositions they want to play, or like can visualize what they want the game to plan to be. Because I know, like, for example, Robert Yip, he works on Immortals, and when Song was away, he was on stage. I mean, there's no way he was like giving his contributions to pick ban. There was like an assigned person. I think it's the same with Lemon. Like, Lemon is a player who I think has more of a say in pick ban than their coach. But that doesn't mean that their coach doesn't contribute in a lot of different areas. So I think while initially pick ban was their responsibility for coaches, I don't think that that is like true as much anymore.
Do you think there's an advantage to having the coach doing that over a player, though? Because to me, if a player gets tilted in the game and then they're going into pick ban and they're the ones that have to do it, having an outside presence to be able to help with pick ban seems like it's pretty important. You know, someone who maybe is a bit more detached from the actual like emotions of the game.
Yeah, of course. I think that if you can have someone that can take in a lot of like different opinions and make sure that they have a cohesive plan going forward and they make the last decision, it's probably better. But I don't think that, like, say if a team, let's say TL, for example, they're a team that would greatly benefit from having a very cohesive structure and someone who can help them with like their physical, mental well-being, because those are like the 2 facets of the, I think, team that they've missed a lot in the last year. I would invest in that coach who doesn't do the pick ban over someone who does. So there are like different teams who need those things more.
For me, I've always really respected coaches that, aside from pick bans, like after they've chosen the compositions, can take the couple minutes before the team goes into the game to be like, remember this, you know, they have Jarvan, he could come level 2 gank or whatever, like lay out the first 5 minutes, taking into account what has happened in pick bans that the enemy has been able to get, as well as what you've been able to get. Like how many coaches in the league do you think tend more towards the side of kind of just like the little strategic reminders, or more towards like how many do we have that actually go, you know, super deep into, whether it's analysts or themselves, the actual picks?
Sure. So the the minute that you have after pick ban is over and the game starts, I think all the coaches have to leave at 5 seconds. So that's something that you train during scrims, because after the pick ban is over, you basically have a checklist that you go through. It's where your early game plan is, what lanes have pressure, and what you want to be playing to. And then after, you always want to remember what the win conditions of both comps are. And then last is how you want the team fights to go. Like if they're going to be flanking, and if you're going to be team fighting like straight front to back. These are all these 4 things you usually talk about in that minute. And then sometimes if you like recognize very specific game things, like if they have like Elise and a very snowbally champion top, you know that that is going to be like a targeted focus. So like any reminders that you can give them is really good, but usually the checklist of the other 4 things is practiced in scrims. So it's even if the coach isn't there, they can just prep the players to have that conversation too.
Welcome back, everybody, to our series between Goldcoin United and eUnited, where eUnited has selected to be on the blue side for game number 2, coming off of a very interesting victory against GCU in game 1.
Yeah, also on the blue side in that game. Feels like GCU is pretty happy on red side, eUnited's pretty happy on blue side, and it's going to be something I want to track over the course of the series, because it's often coaches who help make that decision, and we just heard a lot from Parth about all that stuff. And Tristana was the first pick last time around. We'll have to see if that's something that's going to continue to be the focus for the draft, because there's been a lot of Kalista and Caitlyn bans. Once those are out, you often see Tristana, and if GCU keeps opting to red side, they'll pretty much never get a chance at Tristana if that stays high priority.
And we'll also have to see if Goldcoin United changes up any of the bans whatsoever as well. Kalista, Caitlyn, and Thresh were game number 1 for Goldcoin United in the first ban phase, whereas Maokai, Orianna, and Jarvan were the ones for eUnited. And it looks like so far, so much the same plan.
And that's kind of the thing that I was getting at last game a little bit, was that both teams ended up with 2 different game plans, and both of them at different points executed them relatively well. So with eUnited back on blue side here, you might see, for the most part, a run back of the 2 strategies, where it's, for the most part, mostly the same ideas. And so already we see the Tristana first pick, GCU going for the Varus. Remember the second pick?
It was Nara, but they're going with Gragas this time. They're taking it away from Dandy, and they're getting Santorin something else in the jungle.
Already changing things up a little bit. Not too different in terms of what it results the overall comp being. The Gragas pick a little less scrappy if they bump into each other in the jungle. A little less creative that you can be with his pathing, the way that Rek'Sai can get over walls and stuff like that. But still a relatively strong early game champion in terms of being able to gank the lanes, and then obviously fantastic tank in the late game.
Yeah, something that Santorin is very apt to do is the fact that the body slam, much like the Rek'Sai tunnel, will be able to get him into different situations where he can, of course, cover the map and litter it with wards, which is something that Goldcoin United very much so likes doing. And interestingly enough, the Lulu, I understand, but the blind Poppy is confused. I mean, aside from my dislike for the champion, picking that while the Camille was still available, they know the Nara is available, so many other options still available for solo in the top lane to kind of go to like a more carry-style top laner. They go for the tank buster in Poppy.
Yeah, this is a very different look than we were expecting to see, as I was hyping this up as a potential run back of game 1 instantly. With that Poppy pick. You flip it on its head. It's a champion that I think is a little potentially underused in the meta right now, just because I've seen it a number of times between LCS and Challenger Series, and every time I see it, it looks decent. I believe we saw Brandini playing it. We've definitely seen Licorice play it before, and it is something that is very strong into a couple of the carry matchups, as well as can combine well with a couple minor synergies. If you end up on a Talia pick again or something like that, you can set up a wall for the Poppy to stun into. There's some tricky stuff like that that can come out of it, as well as the fact that it just becomes very tanky very quickly.
And it looks like they are going to wind up taking the Poppy. It's starting to ban away some of those carry matchups that may be able to abuse it during the lane phase. The Gnar gets banned away immediately by eUnited, so switching up their ban strategy from game number 1, where there were 4 mid lane bans during the second ban phase. Goldcoin United, though, look like they might be doing the same exact kind of thing, going for the LeBlanc ban, and can't remember the other one, but it's a Vladimir ban this time around, so still targeted at GBM, trying to limit his champion pool.
Vladimir ban is a little bit surprising to me, something that I don't, it's not something we see a ton in the current meta, and if you pick it into the right matchup, it can be very effective and into certain champions. I guess for GCU, the fact that their backline of Varus and Zyra, what they've shown so far, is relatively immobile. I can see where a Vladimir pick could potentially be annoying for it, but it is something that there is a lot of damage, healing reduction in the game right now with Bramble Vest having it. Varus's E has it, as well as the fact that your, armor pen item that you end up going will usually have it. And GCU going to go with the Cho'Gath up in the top side. a little bit of a Licorice special being played right back against him.
So they're going for a tanky, ever-growing top laner to go into the Poppy. So we'll see how Solo winds up using that in the versus Poppy matchup. Although earlier in EU, we did see that Unicorns of Love was playing Poppy in the jungle. And by locking in Shen here, as well as potentially the Galio, we might be just going for triple tanks and all in on the Tristana plan.
Yeah, so this is going to be one of those very aggressive dive comps, potentially. Cycling through some GBM favorites here. Plays a good Victor, plays a Zillion, plays a Zeyzal.
Well, he plays pretty much every champion. He's had a very long career as a mid laner and a little bit of time as a backup jungler, but mostly a mid laner.
Yeah, we'll gloss over that history a little bit. Cassiopeia, not bad here. Relatively beefy frontline already with the Gragas and the Cho'Gath shown. Going to want to be able to cut through some of that. And yeah, like you said, the big thing here is the Poppy in the jungle. Shen goes top. Nice to see that there's a little bit of a flex pick there for when they show it early and over the course of the 5-game series. If they do see that Poppy again, they have to be very concerned about where it's going to go. But it's something that we haven't seen very much. Just with a lot of the tanks being in the jungle when Poppy initially came out, some people were running it with Warrior Enchant, and they would go very aggressive Poppy who could instantly kill you, 100-0. Probably going to go the Cinder Hulk variant here, obviously. And hopefully it works out. It has some very potent ganks if you are near a wall, but if you're not much that the Poppy can do.
It kind of seems like some of these players have kind of swapped their roles on the team. Solo picking up the Cho'Gath, whereas Licorice is the one that's playing the Shen this time around. Dandy's going to be playing something different in the jungle instead of the Gragas. We've seen him kind of, kind of go back to time and time again ever since that has been, the strength of the junglers.
Yes, and that Cho'Gath Shen swap that you're mentioning, we are on 7-15, and that was when the Cho'Gath E nerfs came in a little bit. And it's something that maybe Licorice feels like that matchup has flipped, because back when everyone was picking Shen into Cho'Gath, we weren't sure who actually wins that matchup. And Licorice, through a couple outplays, was able to kill Shen's, but it was always very, very scrappy. So looks like with those small nerfs, maybe he does feel like the Shen is the way to go.
And we see Fly reprising his role on Syndra in the mid lane. This time around, GBM a little bit more of an aggressive pick, at least for the early stages of the lane phase in the Cassiopeia. They also pack a bit more of a punch in the later stages of the game. So they have the two kind of carry situation, whereas you have pretty much the same thing on Gold Coin United, but you also have a Cho'Gath who has pretty much an instant delete button. So I guess you got two Syndras for the price of one.
Yeah, absolutely. And GCU, for the most part, their team comp is styled the same way. It is still focused on going for a lot of lane dominant things. They have the Varus, Syndra, and Zyra all back from the first game, and they're going to try and dominate the bot half of the map. eUnited, on the other hand, though, have a very different team comp, not at all focused on getting a, Talia roaming up to a Camille to snowball a split push here. Looks like a lot more focus on potential bot dives. They do still have that hyperscaling Tristana, so you might see some focus around that. As well as the fact that, like we were saying, with those wall stuns available to Poppy, she's not bad at invades, so maybe you might see something like that, but they don't have enough pressure in some of their lanes to guarantee a very aggressive Poppy playstyle.
One of the things I want to kind of keep our eyes peeled for is the early top lane trades, because at level 1, throughout the Challenger Series, we've been able to see Cho'Gath's basically trying to fight Shen at level 1. And that was something that you specifically were keeping your eyes on. The fact that Cho'Gath starts E with the Vorpal Spikes, thinks he could outduel the Shen, but Shen just pops his Q and then deals a ton of damage back onto the Cho'Gath, and suddenly Cho'Gath's on the back foot for the early lane phase here. Licorice is the one that kind of bucked that trend by not fighting the Shen at level 1. But if, like you said here, now if the Cho'Gath nerfs have come in, the E doesn't deal as much damage anymore. We'll see how Licorice plays this lane, and if he gets aggressive on the Cho'Gath, knowing that that's a factor.
We'll have to see if that's going to be how it's played. As we see Zeyzal contesting the plants. Was able to step on a couple of them there. I guess they're dragon eggs at that skin.
And that's Dragon Trainer Lulu, so he's just trying to collect more dragons.
Look more aggressive. He's stomping on them.
But you have to collect them somehow. Listen, you don't collect rupees in Zelda by taking the pots and just very casually holding on to them. You smash them.
You don't smash the rupees. Anyways, we'll move on. Early on, the push advantage will be going to the bot lane of GCU. Up in the top side, like you said, Solo trying to do his best to avoid any kind of auto attacks that are come in from Licorice here. Not many melee champions can deal with the level 1 of Shen. His pull-through damage when he gets the Spirit Blade through the enemy champion, his auto attacks just end up doing a massive chunk of percent health damage, and it's very hard to contest.
Let me see. Mid lane matchup between GBM and Fly. We'll see how GBM fares more in this one. Licorice in the early level 2 immediately wants to get into taunt onto Solo. Gets a bit of a trade back and forth, but Solo being A-okay with that one.
Yep. Perfectly fine for Solo. He's going to be able to regen off these creeps with his passive. And for the most part, it's going to be hanging on. You saw GBM getting aggressive in the mid lane against Fly. Was able to proc his Storm Raider Surge off a quick trade. Not going to keep chasing forward when he did it. But maybe if, GBM can play this matchup very well, it is a relatively skilly matchup, though it is Syndra favored. Maybe he can get some pressure back for this Poppy.
And we'll have to see where the Poppy actually goes in the jungle. Danny historically has been a little bit more of an aggressive jungler. I'm not entirely sure how aggressive the Poppy jungle can get, but as you mentioned, Gragas himself, not necessarily known as the biggest scrappy jungler, so if you wind up running into each other in the jungle, this may just wind up being Danny being able to power farm until he hits a power spike where he can approach some of those angles and get through on some of those tower dives to make something happen, potentially in the mid lane, and most likely around bot side of the map, where Rikara and Whyin are once again aggressively pushing up.
It was surprising to see the Poppy pick also taken at a point in time where there wasn't a ton that it was effective against, with that steadfast presence being able to block a lot of gap closers and escapes and things like that. It can be a menace for backlines if you're able to get a jump onto them or to dissuade engages, but there's really not too much mobility at all on the side of GCU. Only Santorin has a body slam, and that's it. So, that's not going to see too much effectiveness. I mean, when people are immobile, it is nice for a Poppy because it makes your wall stuns more reliable. People can't gap close out of them. It also means that you're going to have an easier time getting to that backline if you ever find a flank or something, but usually you do see that Poppy taken into things with a little bit more mobility so she can try and deny it.
We saw on the bottom side of the map a large chunk of damage being dealt to Deftly as Santorin makes his home in the enemy jungle. Does want to throw a barrel off the wall, but actually just spotting out where Deftly and Zeyzal are actually going to be moving to, as Zeyzal and Deftly decide to attack the Krugs and try to get Santorin out of their own jungle, but now Whyin and Rikara being able to once again push this lane into the tower. Very effective against the Tristana because your explosive charge, the splash damage makes it very difficult to deal precisely CS underneath the tower, as we do see about a 10 CS advantage in favor of both eUnited, Varus, and Zyra.
Very aggressive pushing available for this GCU bot lane. Santorin doing his best to capitalize on it, playing to that side of the map. Definitely last time did fall a little bit behind in the laning phase, but wasn't the end of the world, was still able to kind of hit his power spikes. We'll have to see if that's what eUnited goes for again this time around, where you saw Zeyzal opting for Sightstone and things like that before getting the upgrade to the Ancient Coin line as well as the Ardent Sensor.
See on the top side now, both of these solo laners, level 5, almost level 6, and I can kind of expect that's where the Cho'Gath really starts to turn this matchup around against the Shen. Having the Feast available means that, well, Shen can't necessarily dodge out of the Spirit's Refuge, so once again, Solo being very, very healthy because of his passive, being able to sustain himself up there. And I wanted to take a look at this for the early lane here, but now that they kind of got into the 2 top lane tanks mode, it's not necessarily as impactful.
Yeah, I was going to say a pretty different storyline from what we were looking at the last game where it was Carry versus Gnar. And I mean, just the matchup between the two players is very interesting just because Solo was kind of the guy. He's one of the gatekeepers of the NACS, always in the finals, it feels like, always on one of the top teams. Plays very well often as like the kind of de facto NACS top laner. And then this year in particular, Licorice is one of the guys who's come up and really contested him and kind of said, I'm the new hotness. Everyone should be talking about me as potentially one of the better new players, one of young guys in North America. And after that game 1 performance, Solo got a solo kill a couple times, was able to force a flash. Kind of trying to put Licorice in his place. It feels like a little bit more of a personal battle between these two than you might see in some of the other positions in this matchup.
Yeah, well, we've definitely been able to see the fact that Licorice, in his rookie split, was highly regarded as the best top laner in the North American Challenger Series, but it was Solo's team that wound up winning that one and then taking multiple LCS teams to a 5-game series in this summer promotion tournament. Now that we're in the final promotion tournament, they find each other staring at one another from across the rift of the elimination match. And eUnited, after squeaking through that victory there, Solo's definitely going to have a lot to prove. And I guess it does add a little bit more of a personal punch to it if he does it on a champion that Licorice is the one that busted out in the Challenger Series. Actually, bottom side of the map, though, definitely getting aggressive. He flashes forward, doesn't exactly have the Buster Shot, but he does have the stand united coming in from Licorice, and Rikara going to flash away, barely stays alive. Now Santorin coming with a flash body slam, results in first blood on the Deftly, but Dandy comes around the opposite side and answers the kill with the Poppy.
Very aggressive play there. As we see, Danny still not in a great spot, probably going to have to go down for this one. Ends up a 2 for 1 for GCU after eUnited pulled the trigger on a bot lane play where they did not have that many advantages. What had happened was up in the top side, with the Shen being able to have double globals, he actually used his teleport to get back in the lane and pushed a massive wave into Solo, who had to walk back to lane with his purchase. And during the time that Solo's under that turret CSing, Licorice was almost 20 CS ahead, and so they go, well, let's make a play on the bot side where Solo has to choose between teleporting in to cover this or get the CS. And the problem was they were still brute forcing a play against a stronger bot lane who was not down any summoners, as well as the fact that Santorin was still in the area. So that play goes south. GCU covered that play. Solo collects all his farms, does not end up teleporting down, pushes it in, and already about 1,000 gold lead now for GCU. So there's the big wave that they're going to try and force this play on.
Yeah, and as you saw, the flash forward from Deftly aggressively trying to position him with the taunt from Shen coming in, but Rikara flashes away, and Licorice not having the damage to finish him off.
Not quite enough damage. Definitely was running forward for one more auto attack. That was when Santorin was able to get in range. And even though Dandy was able to find that cleanup kill, a little bit of chain CC here out of GCU stops Dandy from being able to get out. He completely gives up on escaping that path and just turns back.
So now 2 kills to 1 in favor of GCU. They turn around that dive, and as you mentioned, Dandy was wrapping around the backside, and it looked like that he wanted to potentially go for a tower dive, but there were no minions in position for that one, and the play had already kind of been executed at that point in time. So maybe jumping the gun, getting a little bit too excited is the side of eUnited, and GCU are going to be the ones that come out ahead because of that. More importantly, though, the kills have gone over onto Santorin. So it's not like they gave away a bunch of kills to the Varus or a bunch of kills to the Zyra, who can now harass that lane indefinitely on the bottom side of the map. It's going to be on Santorin, who has now finished his Syndra hold, to transition that advantage elsewhere on the map for GCU.
One of the places they can potentially look at is, of course, that Cassiopeia does have the cleanse, so it will be a little difficult, but if you can ever land the ultimate on Gragas back into your Syndra, you do have 100 to 0 potential. GBM did go for an early Negatron cloak, so kind of indicating he's aware of that. Santorin on Gragas will mostly be dealing magic damage, so you're building up defenses against both potential threats. As well as the fact that Zyra does magic damage and big Cho'Gath. So a lot of magic damage here on GCU's team comp.
Varus's execute, the % HP damage is magic damage. So actually atomizing magic resistance is pretty good against this team. We already see the Spectre's Cowl picked up for Shen on the top side of the map as well. Santorin, however, going to continue to try to exert his 2-kill dominance over the Poppy in the jungle by invading aggressively on this red buff. We already have Sly shoving at the mid lane and roaming down to add support, as is Whyin, who comes around with his little dragon eggs to provide cover. And it looks like GCU will successfully steal this buff away.
One of the things that I was going to want to keep my eye on for the Poppy was I can see a world where with aggressive laners, the Poppy can invade and try and get wall stuns constantly, as we see another bot lane flash forced out by Whyin coming out of the jungle after that invade. Gets it out of Zeyzal. And like I was saying, Poppy can make some plays happen in the jungle, struggles a little bit more in ganking lanes. But if you have losing lanes like they have in the mid and bot lane where you're going to get pushed in pretty consistently, you can't go for invades, and then you also have a hard time taking that fight in your own jungle because the enemy team can probably rotate first. So you see that the Poppy pick is struggling a little bit to find openings, but it is still early in the game, and Poppy is a tank that scales very well.
Poppy, pretty much the most annoying of tanks, where it just becomes absolutely unkillable and you really can't do anything. As you mentioned, has the ability to deny engages, although the only real engage potential they have here is Santorin body slamming in range for kind of a explosive cast, because we did see Santorin utilizing his advantage in the jungle right now to solo down that Ocean Drake. So GCU is going to be taking the first dragon of the game for themselves.
Yeah, GCU have more of that stand still and kill you from range team comp. They have the Varus stun, Zyra root, Syndra root, Cho'Gath knockup. Lots of ways to shoot people from far away.
The never move composition.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that Poppy will not find very much effectiveness with that steadfast presence.
No, they do have a Shen on the side from eUnited, though, so they have a way to kind of gap close in the backline to try to get something done. And of course, they also kind of have a composition that isn't necessarily as fond of hard engaging either. You have the Poppy who can charge in, and the Shen that can taunt him, but that's pretty much it. Like we mentioned before in Champions Select, this composition was looking like a completely all-in protect the Tristana, but now they also have the backup option if they get a lot of armor or they start getting the tanks get really, really far ahead. The Cassiopeia is kind of the backup insurance of the late game carry from GPM.
Yeah, GCU's comp does eventually feel like it's going to have a hard time fighting versus eUnited, even though we're talking about this Poppy pick not being particularly effective. But GCU has a lot of skill shot CC, so if you're trying to lock down a Lulu sped up Tristana in some way, you might struggle to do that, and you're not super long range. And if eUnited are able to go into the late game relatively even with a Shen to protect the Tristana as well as that Lulu pick, you can find yourself having a very difficult time getting to her in team fights. You need one of those CCs to land, then maybe you can get the CC follow-up. But like I said, all of it is skill shots.
So Goldcoin United, the team that was touted for their team fighting prowess, may have their hands full a little bit if this game decides to go long, which is kind of what they enjoy doing. They do usually thrive around the later game, team fight-centric kind of play style. But now they find themselves once again in the early game here of game number 2 of this best of 5. About 1,000 gold in the lead. Most of that is going to be on Santorin as he has both of those kills. And you can see about 700 gold over the opposing player of Dandy and Poppy. There's a little bit of a lead in the mid lane here for Fly, as well as on the bottom side of the map, Rikara is 130 compared to 103 CS advantage showing on this Varus.
Yeah, better games out of Rikara here today, this time also on the Varus as opposed to Tristana, showing that he can win this matchup when he's on the favored side. The thing is, though, he was always kind of touted as having good hyper-scaling play.
Yep. One of the highest KDAs coming in from the Challenger Series, and that, of course, is on the picks like the Kog'Maw we saw in the Challenger Series Finals against eUnited, where I believe he was 12-1 at one point in time. So Rikara's late game carry, definitely strong, but we'll see how he can push these advantages on Varus. He already has gotten lane phase advantages in both games 1 and game number 2. The unfortunate Baron steal in game number 1, however, kind of thwarted all of GCU's built-up advantages. Now, Fly going toe-to-toe with GBM in the middle, and the cleanse was popped on the paralyzing gaze, but now GBM getting the best of him, but Santorin flash body slams in. Teleport's being channeled from Solo as well. Explosive Cast tries to lock GBM against the wall, but Shen standing there will save him. Both top laners have joined the fray, and nobody's going to die today.
Almost a sick ultimate there out of Santorin. Predicted the flash and threw it back there, but the angle was not quite right, and like you said, pins GBN up against the wall as opposed to delivering it to the Cho'Gath to potentially get a feast off. Either way, very intelligent play out of Santorin, just not able to find the perfect angle for it to work. And all that was kicked off from an aggressive trade out of GBM, able to open up onto that Syndra. And that's what I was saying, a bit of a skilly matchup that can go Cassio's way, though not necessarily favored in it.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, we see the Abyssal Mask Rush coming out from GBM. So he's turned that Negatron Cloak on over to an item that not only gives him resistances, but will also give him a little bit more magic penetration. So while he's still stacking up that tier, he's taking aggressive trades because of those Twin Fang bonuses, just stacking down on top of the Syndra.
I'll be keep my eye on this build as it progresses, because you would think a Banshee's Veil would be the item that you would turn that Negatron Cloak into early. There's, like we said, a lot of skill shot CC that this would give you a little bit of a buffer against. Instead it goes for the Abyssal Mask, and there's not a ton of magic damage on the side of eUnited that's going to get amplified with it. Cassiopeia will be able to make good use of it, but overall, just something that does not feel like necessarily the best single item MR that you can get when you're against this team comp with GCU. And maybe you go with the Banshee's Veil as well, because like we said, GCU is so magic damage heavy, and that's why I want to see exactly what GBM is going to finish this build off with.
And don't forget the Abyssal Mask and the Banshee's Veil kind of swapped roles a little bit earlier on when we kind of had the mid-lane mage kind of item snafu that happened. So now the Abyssal Mask, technically the more defensive of the items, even though the Banshee's Veil still has the ability to block out the spell. The Banshee's Veil is the one that actually has the itemization, so, or the ability power on the item. So meaning, if you go for both, it's still a very viable option, because it's not like he's stopping building damage to get 2 defensive items in a composition.
Right, but at the same time, you are spending at that point so much gold just on magic resist when you could be working on higher DPS items is just the question that comes, because Cassio is one of those champions that hyperscales, like we said, can build 6 full items. And if you use your boots spot instead on a Banshee's Veil, that makes sense to me. But if it's your first 2 items or it's your first 3 items, is that going to be quite enough damage to melt through a Cho'Gath or something like that?
Well, that's kind of one of those delayed item power spikes we saw coming up in the bottom lane here of the eUnited, as we do see Tristana getting body slammed on, but is able to leap away from that one, as the Ardent Sensor was rushed this game by Zeyzal, as opposed to waiting for the 2-item power spike of the Tristana. They went for Ardent Sensor and Static Shiv at the same time instead of finishing IE first, but Goldcoin United don't really care about their items. Instead have just gone and taken actually the first tower of the game at 16.5 minutes in.
Yeah, nice movement down there by GCU. They have really good vision control in the bot side jungle. Fly able to get the push on GBM and get the first move out down to that bot side. Still a little scary to go for just because you are down that global to Shen. And that's why you see eUnited right now posturing around this dragon.
We see Solo's Cho'Gath making the long trek down from top lane. We see Deftly having to Tristana hop over the wall as GBM puts out the paralyzing gaze, wants it locking down on the fly, does not yet have the cleanse available, and Dandy's able to slam him down for a kill. Another one follows as Whyin goes down. Rikara has to try to flash over the wall as eUnited find a fight.
This is one of the things that GBM does so well. I mean, we talked about last game criticizing him a little bit for having some greed in him, but he's also a great playmaker. He finds his way into a brush that GCU has no idea that he's in there, starts things off with a big stun. Dandy follows up on that very well. Licorice as well, trying to get that taunt off. They were actually knocked up during it, so he just went underneath them with the taunt, but still great combination of skills there. And here you see GBM just hiding in that brush. Santorin gets a little aggressive. People continue to walk forward. Gets the stun up onto Fly, who's one of the strongest members on the GCU team comp right now. Instantly deleted. And there you see that potential backline dive on the immobile carries that can come through with that Poppy and Shen.
Yeah, so very, very good combination of the frontline tanks, just kind of combining to be a bit of a Bash Bros composition, as GBM was the one that started that fight off. And while GoldCoin United were able to take down the first tower of the game, it is eUnited who respond immediately. A flash body slam on GBM, though. He cleanses out from the stun immediately from Syndra. Can't really cleanse off death, though, as the Unleashed Power takes down GBM.
It's one of those plays where GBM is recalling in the middle of the lane instead of just walking back a little bit more. Santorin sees him from the side brush, knows the flash is still on cooldown, so he gets his own flash body slam off and serves him up for Fly to get the answer kill. And now GCU are setting up a siege in the mid lane, trying to get their second turret of the game.
GoldCoin United say we may have lost the fight, but we're not going to turn the tempo down at all. Instead, decide to siege up this mid lane. United have 0 towers. GoldCoin United now find themselves at 2.
Good play by GCU, answering back. Both these guys trading blow for blow right now. GCU grabs the turret. United tries to punish with the global advantage on the Dragon. So, Solo was roaming down for that, but the play happened just a little bit too fast, not able to get involved. United win that team fight. Now Solo wants to finish up on this top side. The team is working on the Rift Hill. They can try and get over to Solo to help him out if they feel like he's in any danger, but there's a very big Cho'Gath and a not very strong Tristana quite yet.
Not yet. Only has a BF sword and a bunch of magic damage coming out from the static shift. Dandy's being zoned away by Flies on Syndra, as Santorin's going to be able to pick up the Eye of the Herald. He's going to wind up having the Rift Out for the second time in a row. And we'll see if GoldCoin United now. That top lane tower is already super low. I'd be surprised if they use the Rift Out to take that one down and instead try to actually threaten an inner tower with that instead.
Yeah, we'll have to see what they try and do. They could use it later on in the game. Right now, Dandy, there's some of that chain CC that we're talking about. Shen is working down on the bot side by himself. United were able to send him down there while GCU focused on that Rift Herald, so they're down a little bit of tempo right now. You see all of them trying to get these resets off while United pushes aggressively into the top half of the map while Licorice takes her down the bot side.
Yeah, so United find themselves with their first tower of the game off the back of a Licorice split push. This time around, he's not on the Camille, but he has gone for a Titanic Hydra first on the Shen. So
yeah, pretty important to try and grab that to just match with the Cho'Gath natural damage can come through with his spells. So good item to keep that pressure up in the side lane. It definitely gets a little low.
Chain of Corruption goes a little bit wide and definitely is able to jump out of that one and dodge it out. But the Ardent Sensor and the Lulu shield and the Whimsy for a bit of an attack speed boost as well. As we see Zeyzal 4 levels in that one, so actually maxing that first to give Deftly as much attack speed as possible. On-hit damage coming out from the Ardent Sensor and on-hit healing as well. So the faster you attack, the more damage and the more healing you get. Good combination of that on the Lulu, and instead, it's also combined to deal a lot of damage to this tower. We're definitely actually able to just attack without hubris, kind of, and just sit up there and wail away on the tower, even though Rikara and Whyin are kind of throwing skill shots his way.
One of the things we were saying, as long as that Tristana has the speed buff, kind of hard to land those skill shots. You see he's not too worried around this turret, as well as the fact that his team had done a decent job walking in there, getting some vision. Zeyzal still does not have his Sightstone completed, so it is a little darker up on the top side of the map than you would want it to be when you're making this kind of aggressive push. But he should be able to grab that soon enough.
Interestingly enough, too, one of the teams that we've seen in the NA LCS do this was Echo Fox. And when they did go for that very fast Ardent Sensor and delayed the Sightstone, everybody stayed on the yellow warding trinket in order to compensate for the fact that they didn't have the Sightstone wards. Whereas eUnited at this point in time has gone for double sweeper and has upgraded to the Scrying Orb as well. So not necessarily as much vision for them to keep themselves safe, but they're more about vision denial in that area. And as you can see from the side of GoldCoin United, they have a couple of control wards over in the Baron Pit area. However, their wards do not extend past the river, so while United may not have the Sightstone available, they're still doing a good job of trying to keep GCU as much in the dark as they are.
Doing their best, but GCU is a team that is pretty relentless with their vision. You see battles going on in the river right now. They had great vision down the bot side that prompted that kind of skirmish that happened down there. Eventually, eUnited will come online. Zeyzal does upgrade, so he has wards now ready to throw them down, heading into the river to do so.
Full Eye of the Oasis, too. Just like not content to go back when he has Sightstone, just gets the extra 250 gold and upgrades it. So now the vision control may be more on eUnited's side. But more importantly, the fact that they've been able to kind of hold GCU to not getting complete vision dominance while not having a Sightstone. Actually, GBM, speaking of not having vision, might have to be a little bit careful. Your flash display gets the Shen standing out as well. Pops the cleanse, too. So actually, we're going to see Licorice saving the life of his mid laner, as both these teams kind of posturing the fight in the mid lane, but United after that gank attempt does not want to follow through on a full 5v5 team fight.
And a little scary there. You see Solo is able to find a good flank roaming up from the bot side. Just Righteous Glories right at GBM. Almost would have been able to get that kill, but Santorin once again, explosive cast, not quite on point, knocked GBM further away, and then the rest of eUnited, as we saw, were already on their way down to that mid lane and are able to back up GBM.
GCU at least has the Righteous Glory team synergy on point, both of them popping at the same exact time. And Rift Herald summoned in base because that was about to expire, so Santorin channels that one in order to get the Herald. It looks like we'll be marching down onto the top side. Might want to get that very low HP top lane outer tower after all.
Might be able to finish that one off, but unfortunately, if no one else is around, no global gold.
Rift Herald's taking a very long stroll. Actually, it walks pretty fast. I'm actually surprised.
Faster than most champions are. Base movement speed, probably.
Finds the GBM, though. I don't think GBM's going to be... Oh, GBM runs away. United are doing the Dragon at the same exact time, though, so they're using this as a distraction herald.
Yeah, still eUnited with no vision down the bot side. GBM was scared of the Rift Herald, thought there was going to be friends behind it. Not at all. They're all on the Dragon. He will actually finish off that Rift Herald by himself now. Rift Herald accomplishes nothing, unfortunately. Does clear a minion wave.
It does. Poor Herald. All it wanted to do was go for a wall. GBM didn't want it there.
World's not fair, as we see Licorice getting really far forward. Has no idea he's walking into a trap, potentially.
No, actually, the blue buff still is able to wind up going over to Fly, but he's a very tanky Shen, level 15 at this point, full Spirit Visage, Titanic Hydra, and Merc Treads, fighting two primarily magic damage dealing champions, so he'll be content to take that fight pretty much almost any time. And he was able to buy space for GBM on the top side of the map, who's able to take down an outer tower for the side of eUnited.
And brings the gold lead back in their favor this time around. It's kind of what happened in game one. GCU, with that Syndra pick, makes some strong plays. They kind of get a lead for themselves. eUnited start answering back a little bit once the turrets start dropping and then find themselves in the gold lead. Question is, GCU with that single Mountain Dragon this time around, are they actually going to be able to force a Baron or something like that correctly? They also have the Cho'Gath extra secure to make sure that they really do get that if they go for it.
Well, the gold advantages right now from eUnited, now that they have the lead, a lot of it is going to wind up being on the top lane matchup here. The Shen over the Cho'Gath by about 1,500 gold, so huge advantages for Licorice on this side, as well as a couple hundred gold in favor of Deftly and Zeyzal, which I now expect to ever so slightly increase more and more and more. The fact that Zeyzal and Deftly kind of hit the 2-item power spike. So they have the wards, they have the Ardent Sensor, and they have the IE and the Static Shiv. And that's when things start to turn a little bit sour for the wave clear fight. It's actually Dandy flashing in aggressively, gets the stun against the wall on the Fly. He actually popped the cleanse in that one. Chain of Crushing goes wide. Paralyzing Gaze goes up from GBM. He's kind of all by himself because the Cho'Gath in his backline. He's fighting Santorin on one side, Licorice is thrown away on the other, and they knock Cho'Gath completely away as Deftly's going to get the first kill on the Whyin, hopping forward, trying to get the reset. Double kill picked up for Deftly. He's going to leap forward on the Fly, scatters the weak backwards, but the Tristana is strong. A triple kill for Deftly.
Once again, eUnited fighting on their power spikes. Got the IE Static Shiv combination. They also have the Ardent Sensor online. Definitely not focused very much in that fight. And GBM lived for so long that Abyssal Mass paying off that extra bit of defense available. Solo is in range potentially to get this steal. Really nice blast cone usage out of Licorice there. Such intelligent play out of eUnited, secures them that Baron. They blast cone him to the far side, or excuse me, they use the Tristana ultimate to knock him to the far side of the blast cone. Then Licorice taunts over and auto attacks the blast cone to knock himself back while also knocking Solo away. That was one of the smoothest Baron secures I think I've seen in a little while now, especially when compared to what we saw in the last
I was going to say, the last Baron secure I saw was a Tristana Static Shiv crit, stealing it away by hitting a Zyra, but still eUnited coming on top of that fight. Aggressive engaged by Dandy to start that one off as well. We were wondering what the jungle Poppy was going to bring to the table, and the fact that they don't have necessarily a very good way to kind of engage a fight and start things off. But when you have a flash Poppy stun against the wall, I guess that's how you do it.
Oh yeah, I mean, United's engage was always fine for the most part. If they ever find an angle for Dandy on an immobile backline, that's not that bad. The question was, would it be enough? As Dandy here gets knocked into the team, blown up.
They said, what if you find an angle on a mobile Dandy? He wants it going down.
Yeah, that's the thing is GCU still has a ton of CC available. If they're able to find it onto any member, they can finish them off quite quickly. Dandy there working by himself for vision, a little bit ahead of the rest of his team, gets picked off as GCU was waiting in the jungle for him. But yeah, that's the thing is, you know, we talk about GCU's immobile backline. If you can get to them, great. They're going to have a hard time locking down Deftly, and that's kind of what happened in that team fight was Solo was on the backside trying to do something to Deftly, and he was mostly getting ignored. GBM was not focused down quickly enough in the front side. The CC also not locking him down well enough. And they won that fight. They got the Baron. They lose Dandy, but they're keeping the pressure up around mid lane.
So one Baron buff has fallen, and one of their tanks is no longer available. Now respawn on the map, but there you see Licorice that's pushed down the top lane towers. He's gotten an inner tower already, and they're looking for the last outer tower in the mid lane here. The rest of eUnited have grouped up for this one. Although Rikara and Whyin have some decent wave clear, the Baron buff minions are more resistant to that magic damage that Zyra, Syndra, Cho'Gath, and everybody pretty much on Gold Coin United side is going to be providing. So it's really the Rikara show now for wave clear duty. He can only be in so many places.
Only can. Right now he's in the mid lane. Shen pushing up the top side. eUnited, they have the pressure. Licorice can potentially look for a flank by cutting through the jungle. Not much vision control up there. Wouldn't mind seeing something like that. Lulu running back all the way to escort the minion wave. The rest of the team going to push as fast as they can. Pretty cute play out of eUnited, using the Baron buff, increased movement speed on the minion wave to get it to the turret quicker.
There it goes. They get the last outer tower on the map for Gold Coin United. So utilizing this Baron buff for at least 2 towers. It might be looking to pressure in for another one. We see Licorice wrapping around from the top side of the map. Definitely, though, got stunned up and takes a little bit of damage, but he's still got the Ardent Sensor Lulu on his side, so he's going to be able to lifesteal off of some minions. Actually walks over towards the jungle, lifesteals off of, it might be a blue buff steal here, as well as a rotation down from eUnited onto the bottom side of the map. Although it was Dandy leading the charge, he's the only one that doesn't have the Baron buff.
Yeah,
so
sadly enough.
Syndra gets there in just enough time to wind up putting an orb down and putting a stop to the minions, which is very aggressive.
And there you see Deftly sidestep that stun sent out by Fly. He's trying to predict Deftly running forward to hit the turret. Definitely understands that, baits out the stun. GBM, not as effective at dodging a skill shot, takes a lot of damage.
Gets rooted up by Whyin and actually threw the miasma down onto Santorin, so he winds up getting a couple of tower shots to the face for his troubles. Now eUnited stalling out ever so slightly, although they've already gotten 2 towers with their Baron buff, so it's not the worst thing in the world. A flash away there from Zeyzal, getting him out of rupture range, but Dandy's waiting in the brush, as is Deftly. He's going to try to start this one off. Whyin gets charged on by Poppy. Now Licorice and Poppy are in the fray, and Deftly has to try to run away from Fly. Fly wound up popping the untapped power, but did not get the kill onto Deftly's Tristana. Too many shields. 1.
The GCU got a little fortunate there. Whyin got very, very low. Could have been dropped, but eUnited lost track of where Fly was and definitely kited right into him.
Ooh, the Infernal Drake spawned at the same time, so they're able to knock that one down. And now Solo taking a lot of damage from GBM, and Deftly's joined the fight as well. Zeyzal's going to get stunned back a little bit by Fly, but now they've gotten themselves an Infernal Drake. The Baron buff has fallen off, but there's low health bars on GCU, so they have to back away.
Yeah, eUnited, despite the fact that Deftly got a little low there, he does have the ability with that Warrior's mastery to be able to lifesteal back up. He's fine. They also have the Ocean Dragon ticking, so they can continue to force down onto that Infernal Dragon. They grab that one pretty freely after that small skirmish up near the mid lane.
3,800 gold on the nose Baron power play. So eUnited had a slight advantage when they won that Baron fight, and now find themselves with basically a 6,500 gold advantage after coming full force and taking out a couple of towers, winning a team fight by not necessarily even picking up kills, but just by forcing Gold Coin United back and taking another stacking win condition. The fact that they have an Infernal Drake, which is only going to increase the damage that GBM and Deftly can provide.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is they already are probably going to outscale into the late game. You throw that Infernal Dragon on, it becomes a nightmare scenario for GCU. They need to find pickoffs somehow onto the key damage dealers of eUnited, but as long as they're playing safe, they have no easy way of doing that. That's one of the key things about someone like a Maokai or something, is that it is guaranteed lockdown CC. If I flash W you, yes, you might be able to pull me out a little bit, but at the end of the day, I will be able to get you. And here you see how easy it is for eUnited to kite out that Righteous Glory sped up engage by GCU.
We saw the steadfast presence from Dandy coming in handy, but an immediate flash engage down onto Whyin. Deftly picks up the first kill of the fight. Now he's jumping into the backline, gets stunned up by Santorin, but he's going to cleanse off that stun. Paralyzing Gaze goes out. GVM gets knocked forward to continue chasing down onto Santorin, who will not die. Stays alive because of the smite on the Raptor camp. They picked up one, and that's pretty much it.
Bit of a different team fight there where Dandy actually ulted Fly and Solo out of the fight, which means there's less targets to focus down in some sense. So they tried to go into Santorin, who's able to get protected as Solo and Fly make their way back in that fight. Either way, a 1-for-0 and pressure still for eUnited here. Going to continue to push, grabbing their second inner turret of the game.
And we see Deftly's crits already packing quite a punch, forcing Fly away from his own tower, and almost wave killing in just 1 or 2 hits right there. So Deftly, though, has to be a little bit careful. Kind of all by himself. He has Zeyzal recalling not that far behind, but they're not Zyra and Rakan. They can't team up to tag team that, but eUnited now jumping out to massive gold advantage and being able to find these fights with these flash Dandy engages.
Yeah, great look there. It's only onto the support, not necessarily a key target. Fly and Solo end up over the wall, so they go down onto Santorin. They almost get him down low, but a nice stun onto Dandy and Deftly stops any more damage from coming through. They have to be happy with just that single kill. Baron's not up to force around that. That's coming up now, and so GCU is up in the river trying to get some vision control to stop eUnited from being able to force this down easily. Yeah,
and they need to control vision of this area because if eUnited takes another Baron buff, the split push from Licorice has been brutal for Gold Coin United to deal with, and the fact that now eUnited are at the point where they are winning all of these team fights means that a Baron buff can pretty much end the game if you are eUnited. So Gold Coin United, I mean, rushing it down would be kind of a desperation play, but that's not how Gold Coin United plays. They usually want to go in for a control play. Definitely, though, getting caught out. Pops the cleanse and everything, but he just gets soloed up by Fly. That is a huge catch for GCU.
That's exactly what GCU needed. We were saying they need to find a pick onto a priority damage dealer of eUnited's comp. They get Deftly in the mid lane. They're going to try and push this for as much as they can. They start this Baron off. They have the Mountain Dragon, and it looks like eUnited has no plans of contesting this.
They have the vision. They've killed the carry, and eUnited are nowhere nearby this one. Gold Coin United are going to secure themselves the Baron, and that's the kind of calculated play you expect, but that's not the kind of mistake you expect Deftly of all players to make.
He's usually considered such a safe carry, and here it's nice that eUnited makes a big rotation down to this bot side, but the Baron empowered recalls means there's no hope for this to turn into a legitimate push. And GCU are going to start trying to siege up now. We talk about how good their comp can be if people are stuck underneath their turrets. It's a little like shooting fish in a barrel as they try and wave clear your Baron empowered creeps. This could be an opportunity here for GCU to find their way back in the game. They just need to be concerned of the potential engage to come in from Dandy and Licorice. One
of the things that Gold Coin United can do now is, you mentioned they have a composition that's extremely good at sieging. They're really good at pushing waves up to it, the Varus and the Syndra. Their composition, their play style is basically, we enjoy stalling things out until we feel comfortable taking objectives and taking fights. The Baron buff, they can utilize this to push up every single wave. The Elder Dragon's going to be available in about a minute, and that's going to be equally as effective for both of these teams. More specifically, amplifying the one Mountain Dragon that GCU has means that they can utilize the Elder Dragon and the remaining Baron buff to push down into the base of eUnited. So we already saw them feinting down towards the river area on the bottom side of the map, putting down some preliminary vision control. Now they just need to make sure that they can push up these waves and contest that area.
Let's see if they're able to do that. You see Solo up on the top side getting his push onto Licorice. Still has that Titanic Hydra, so can kind of clear the wave, but he's going to struggle to do so. That is the third of the game for GCU. It looks like they're using this Baron buff to potentially posture up near the Elder Dragon as well, not getting too aggressive near these turrets. I would have liked to have seen them get a little more aggressive, try and get the gold lead closer in their favor.
We'll see if they wind up utilizing the Baron buff afterwards. Baron buff will be, if they take Elder Dragon as quickly as it spawns, Baron buff will still have a little bit over a minute left before they're actually able to, before they actually runs out. So they can utilize that as a double neutral objective buffed up push. And as I said before, both these teams have 2 elemental drakes apiece, so it'll be equally as effective as far as the burn and the aspect of the dragon goes.
Speaking of burn, Zeke's Convergence picked up there by Zeyzal.
Ooh.
Haven't seen that too often, but he grabs it. Going to be able to do that whenever he uses his ultimate, summons a little Frost Storm to help burn down targets. Meanwhile, we'll think about that later. GCU started off this Elder Dragon.
To burn down a target of their own, that's the Elder Dragon.
Dandy trying to find a flank. He's too far forward. There's wards there. He has no idea that GCU sees him coming the whole way. He's trying to set up a flank for his team, but he just gets jumped on and dies instantly. And with that, they have the Cho'Gath easily able to secure that. Licorice is trying to find something in return, but can't take that turret.
That's what we were talking about before. Gold United, if they have vision control of an area, if they feel confident and they get a pick or they get some sort of advantage, they will pull the trigger on going for that. So now they have about 30 seconds left on the Baron buff. They have the Elder Dragon burn, which is not only going to help them in a team fight situation, they already have a ton of poke damage and kind of siege potential damage, but now it's also going to be amplifying the effect of taking down these remaining towers. And they've only have 3 this game. There's still 8 left on the map that they can take.
There's a lot of gold available for GCU, as well as all that global gold that you get from these neutral objectives. Baron buff will time out soon, so they will have a hard time getting a double buff push. But if they can land some of that skill shot CC, get that burn down, it's you know, not negligible, and they do have a ton of pokes. They have an easy way of applying some of these damage over time spells onto eUnited as they're trying to hold underneath their turrets.
They have a little bit of desync backs. I think Rikara was waiting until he was able to complete getting an additional BF sword into his build. So a bit of extra damage means that all that poke damage and all that dragon burn will only be amplified more. We see now Gold United trying to posture themselves into a 4-1 split push scenario with Solo on the top side of the map going toe-to-toe against Licorice, and then Gold United establishing vision control between the top and mid lane areas and trying to rotate back and forth between the two and see which one they can actually knock down.
Seemed like neither of them as Dandy tries to start off on the Santorin there.
Gragas is pretty fat, but sometimes even he can't be stunned against the corner of the wall there.
But it is definitely in the mid lane by himself. Ooh. We saw how that went a couple minutes ago. It's kind of the catalyst for GCU getting back in the game. Has to be careful, but looks like GCU is going to be able to grab this turret.
Taking a lot of damage to Santorin in the front line, but he's also tanking up that tower in just enough time for Whyin to deliver the last hit on that one. Rikara now actually trying to go for a red buff. Flash forward by GBN. The Petrifying Gaze will not wind up stunning Rikara. Instead, just turns around at the last second. We are able to get the red buff down on the Deftly. That's a flash and an ultimate down from GBN.
Yeah, not a great trade of objectives there. I would much rather have a flash and a Cassiopeia than a red buff on my Tristana.
You did bring the flash from Rikara, although...
Yeah, it was a nice trade of flashes. And the concern is just that you have to find a way to get onto Rikara, and that can be kind of difficult to do. He has the QSS down, and so if it's just a Shen taunt, he gets out of that. Poppy needs to hit an ER combo to stop him in place for a little while. But eUnited has done a good job finding their engages when they're actually all grouped up, but as soon as one thing goes wrong, it's impossible for them to find the right look. The Elder Dragon fight, Dandy tries wrapping around, jumped on right away. They completely abandon that team fight. Definitely dies early, completely abandoned contesting the Baron.
And so Gold United have kind of gotten themselves a little bit of respite in this game as they put the pause button on eUnited. They're actually able only to take 1 tower off of that double buffed up neutral objective push. Elder Dragon Burn has fallen off. Baron is long gone, and in fact, Baron will be spawning again on the Rift in about 1 minute and 20 seconds. Gold United haven't been able to transition the vision they had on the bottom side back up into the top side, though, so eUnited already have a couple of control wards around the area and have secured the Scuttle Crab vision. So we'll see if eUnited is the one that wants to try to pull the trigger on that. They also have a very fast Baron taking team. They have a super buffed up Tristana because of the Lulu, but more importantly, they have GBM on this late game Cassiopeia, who could just hit like a truck on Baron.
Yeah, that's the thing. We see he has not ended up going with that Banshee's Veil. Said we're going to try and keep our eye on that. Did not want to invest that much into MR early. Is going for a much more damage-focused build now. Going to finish off that Zanya's pretty soon, and then the question is, what does your 6th item become? Do you go for something like a Death Cap to really maximize your DPS? Do you go for that Banshee's Veil to maximize your ability to stay alive in a fight? We'll need to see, because for the most part, GBM has done a good job of not going down early in fights.
It's only died once so far. You see now, Gold United once again in the 4-1 kind of scenario, but they have Dandy wrapped around the backside. This could potentially be good or bad. Dandy was the one that went down in that Elder Dragon contest, which is the catalyst that GCU needed to take that one. Dandy instead being forced away by Santorin. Definitely a little bit far forward. He's going to get wrapped around on by Solo, but dodged it on the Rupture, and static shift crits.
It drops everyone's health bars a little bit. Dandy, I like the idea of finding these flank engages, but it feels like he might be over-forcing just a little bit. It ends up with Licorice in the split push, and then because Dandy's flanked off on the side, you only have a 3-man chorus. He runs forward, tries to get right onto Rikara.
He flashes in, jumps onto Rikara, and delivers Licorice into the backline, but Solo is trying to chomp down onto GBN. The feast has been used, but Cassiopeia and Tristana take him down. Poppy's actually fallen in the pit, but the Baron is acting as a sixth man in this fight. Deftly leaps forward, flashes forward, gets a kill on the fly. Rikara is able to pick up a kill on the backside, but now it's the Deftly show. Triple kill picked up, double kill picked up. Shen gets that one. There's the triple kill for Deftly. I got too excited, and that's an ace for eUnited.
And they're able to meet up with the minion wave up in the top side. Licorice has already got this turret pretty low. eUnited might be able to end the game off this push. A great engage by Dandy onto Rikara kind of forced him to a pit, and they're trading damage onto frontline members as Licorice has ulted on top of him. But that's perfect for eUnited's comp because they do so much more damage to GCU's frontline. So even though he has the Gargoyle Stoneplate pop, Solo goes down first. GBM ends up dying as well, but Deftly is left untargeted in that fight. He's able to run wild and win the game for his team.
They put a lot of eggs in the Deftly basket, and even though he got caught out one time mid lane, he didn't disappoint in the end. eUnited are the ones that jump out to a 2-0 series lead, bucking the trend of all of our Challenger Series finals where they fall down to Gold Coin at 3-1.
And on top of that, GCU, if they have any hopes to come back into this tournament, they have to reverse sweep, something that they attempted to do just yesterday, but came up a little short.
So Gold Coin United now had their backs against the wall, but Zeyzal and Deftly, in that game specifically, were combining to do a lot of work for the side of eUnited. I mean, we had our questions around like when the Ardent Center timing and is it going to work out? And even though they were behind in lane and Rikara and Whyin were kind of, you know, they're up in CS, they had pressure, they're able to get kills on the bottom side. And there were a couple of snafus like the tower dive early on at level 6 or 7 where Dandy wound up going down and they gave up 2 kills. They were still able to come out ahead in that one and on a 7-2-3 Tristana.
I mean, that's the thing is, you know, GCU does play a little slow. That's one of the things we've always said about them. And eUnited is basically saying, okay, well, we'll just take better late game carries with the Tristana. The Talia, not, you know, significantly better than the Syndra, but still a very high damage DPM champion who's able to just consistently pelt front lines down. And so as a result, you know, they just go into these games, they get a little scrappy. Both teams are not executing perfectly, but as the game goes later and later, that does still favor eUnited.
Yeah, and we saw eUnited were being able to handle themselves a lot better in these late games to like kind of team fight situations. Game number 1, they did wind up having a bit of a lucky Baron steal, whereas game number 2, they were pretty much in control from the 20-minute mark onward. They got themselves a decent gold advantage because of the Licorice split push, but they didn't necessarily play around the fact that Shen was the strong one. They were able to transition that into a lead for the rest of the team.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is you're not always going to play around just whoever your strongest is. Sometimes you play around your weaker member and try and make sure that they stay relevant over the course of the game. And that's a little bit what's going on here with the Tristana pick. They're not over focusing, oh, Shen's kind of winning his matchup. Let's just keep forcing plays down around that bot side.
Yeah, so we already got 2 games down in this best of 5 series. So now let's check in with the analysts to see what they make out of that second eUnited win.
Thank you very much, Tom and Mark. And here it is, eUnited finding their first 2 wins of the whole promotion tournament. And they do it yet again on another Tristana game by Deftly.
And against a team that they have really kind of struggled against historically, you know, in these big series, and they lost them in the finals, they lost them last year. They always seem to lose to GCU, but they're playing very well today.
All right, let's take a look at that last replay there of the ace that happened at Baron, because this one just closed it out right here. And during the fight, you were saying you had a good point about front lines.
Yeah, I mean, it's just simply talking about the fact that GCU at this point cannot really match up in a front-to-back fight against eUnited. You're playing against a Cassiopeia and a Tristana. They have outscaled you. They're so much stronger in the 5v5. And really, a lot of what I felt this game came down to is simply the kind of draft that you go for. And Kobe talked about it, you know, on the other stream. He's talking about the fact that, yes, you can pull off split push type comps. You can do them, but they're much more difficult to execute. You have a time limit kind of running on you because you're playing into a Cassio and a Tristana. And once they get to that point, it's almost impossible to win a 5v5 without a tremendous mistake or an incredible play coming out from the other team. So for me, it comes more down to the fact that GCU did not push the pace, did not actually execute on a level to where they could close out the game early enough, because once you get to that 6-item point, there's almost nothing you can do.
Yeah, and actually the team that was pushing the pace here was eUnited. They went with a 3 to 4-man bot lane dive, and it ended up not going well because GCU was able to turn around and pick up 2 kills here. If we roll that replay at 7:30, there it is.
Yeah, it was a bit of a botched dive, a bit ambitious perhaps, and I mean, they are very close. If this was a level 6 Tristana, could have buster shot back and certainly secured that kill, but barely the Varus is able to survive. Dandy decides to go in,
Surprise.
Does take him out. It is a trade of kills there, but First Blood had already gone over to GCU, and then here, I'm not really sure what Dandy is thinking. With both members out of mana, I think he actually could have just walked out. but perhaps worried about, as you suggested, a mid lane roam coming down, giving over a kill later, or maybe looking for an angle to pin the Zyra against the wall and try to kill him, but just walking too close to the turret. Either way, not the best dive, but that comes out okay.
Yeah, I'm Poppy. I'm pretty tanky. I'm a world champion dandy, but unfortunately that kind of doesn't carry over into this game. And then the game slowed down. It started playing into eUnited's hands. Definitely had enough time to scale up, get the items that he needed, and was able to pop off in the first Baron fight that led to a triple kill and Baron heading on over to his team.
I mean, they just have such a strong 5v5 team fight. A really nice engage on this fight by Dandy, finding the pin on the wall. You essentially have two massive frontliners with Shen and the Poppy. Then you have Lulu to support your two hyper carries. So as long as Deftly and GBM are safe, you're going to be successful in these fights. And definitely credit over to Dandy for finding some really good ultimates to disrupt the fights, to knock people out. There was multiple ones throughout the game that he had, knocking multiple members out and really kind of separating the fight, allowing them to very easily just pincer down on one side and to clean up the team fight.
So if you're the side of Goldcoin United, you fought tooth and nail, slugfest with Phoenix 1. You showed some resilience, and you showed that, hey, we belong here. Now you're down 0-2 against your nemesis. What do you have to do to get yourself back in the game?
Well, we've seen that they can actually bounce back from this. They almost reverse swept P1, right? So it's certainly a situation that they were in before, and they are going to be able to have the confidence that they know they can come back. They have the ability to do that. But I think it really just comes down to, if you're going to allow the other team to draft for super late game scaling, then you have to either draft late game scaling to match that, or you have to be willing to actually make plays and push the pace to win the game early, because those are the two options. If you play, an inferior late game comp and you're letting the game go late, you're playing passively, you're almost always going to lose.
And in the Challenger Series, Fly was able to move around, make plays, and step up, especially in the finals. He went toe-to-toe with GBM, was able to win that matchup. Here, though, he hasn't been able to quite do that. So what do you want to see out of him?
I mean, I think it just, once again, it comes down to what kind of composition are you running. If you're running an inferior late game composition, you need to be proactive. We want to see him making those plays, moving around the map, getting active, because that has been a big criticism of GCU. The fact that while they are a pretty strong late game comp, they often kind of just wait around and are not actually proactive. They wait for the opportunities to come to them. And if the other team is playing hyper scaling and you're just going to sit back and play passively, well, you're probably going to lose.
All right, on the side of eUnited, you've been so close twice. You lost in the tournament last year. Here you are. You have the opportunity to move to that final promotion tournament game to get yourself over the hump. What do they need to do to put the nail in the coffin?
I think it's more of the same, right? That things have been looking pretty good. Draft to your strengths. If eUnited wants to play slow, keep drafting, scaling, keep playing for those opportunities in late game. And I think that as long as they're getting comfort picks for Dandy, I think that Dandy has been a guy to make plays, who is the player who's going to look for those openings to start off team fights. And I think putting him on someone who can initiate, who can start things up, it has been very successful.
And so you've given two options here. You've given, if they're playing late, we're going to go later, or we're going to do what Goldcoin United tried to do earlier. We're going to pick early and make those plays. Which one is easier for the teams to execute here in the final
team fight comps are so much easier to run, I think. Split pushing is massively harder. That's why these kind of death ball compositions are so powerful, because it's such a simple win condition. All right, well, you farm, you try to avoid not fighting. Now you have all your items. You go 5 people together and you shoot the person in front of you, right? It's pretty simple to actually execute. Split push comps can tear those apart, and you can execute on those. They can be really, really powerful, but it requires a lot of coordination. It requires a lot of proper map movements, vision control to actually enable those top laners, which are generally part of the split push plan. So it's a lot harder to pull off, and that's why I tend to think that, especially at levels like this, the teamfight compositions are superior.
So Goldcoin United just got word that Goldcoin United is going to be subbing in Mad Life, and Mad Life and Whyin have both played the Thresh, kind of had that support champion pool. Are there any big differences that you think will happen now that GCU subbing in Mad Life?
I mean, one thing you're kind of hoping is that Mad Life has been watching the game with the coaching staff, right? And that he has an idea of what is going wrong, that he can actually bring that into the game, that he can execute on their game plan, he can look to make plays and try to capitalize on some of the weaknesses that he may have seen from their opponents.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and take a step away, but stay tuned in for more of this series between eUnited and Goldcoin United. Don't touch that browser.
Buster Shop, he does have the stand United coming in from Licorice, and Rikara going to flash away, barely stays alive. Now Santorin coming with a flash body slam, results in first blood on the Deftly.
I'm on. Let's go. Syndra, no cleanse.
Hey, come back.
Okay, kill them more. Nice.
Hey, Lulu.
You guys got him.
I'm so low. No flash.
She's slow. You can finish.
Kill.
Okay, nice.
Deftly leaps forward, flashes forward, gets a kill on the fly. Rikara is able to pick up a kill on the backside, but now it's the Deftly show. Triple kill picked up, double kill picked up. Shen gets that one. There's the triple kill for Deftly. I got too excited.